the folks sitting behind me and against the wall and other places.
Leslie Leon, Communications Director, NWC-CAC.
I'm Mark Naylor with Civitas.
Right here.
Sure. Mark Naylor with Civitas.
I'm Todd Winskowski, Deputy Director, NDCC.
Eric wants to go last.
I'm on.
Good afternoon, Willie Franklin with National Western Center.
Karen McHenry with National Western. Drew Nancy?
Drew already introduced himself.
Okay, Nancy.
Having a moment with my city council person. Nancy Grandis-Jones with Global Civic Partners and JJJ Properties.
Councilman?
Can we let Paul go first before you go?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
We're going to start with Paul Andrews.
Since he was...
Okay, so lots of things happening. We are laser focused on the Denver County Fair right now across my staff for the most part. And thinking through structurally how everything is going to work. And the one thing we wanted to do was make it inexpensive. I refrain from the word cheap because it's going to be a lot of fun and it's going to be inexpensive fun. So adults are going to be $10, kids are going to be $3. And we're going to have 18 amusement rides out front in this parking lot. So for a kid to have an unlimited ride pass, you pay the $3 and then you pay an extra 10. You can ride all 18 of those rides. So we're still kind of honing in on exactly how all of it's going to work. We have a beer festival, a wine festival. We have roller dolls going on during the day and a national competition people can come enjoy. And we have a Hispanic Heritage Day on Sunday that is going to have the Lucha Libre featured. And the guys that are coming actually are pretty fired up to put on a pretty good show. So I think we're putting together really a nice event that can grow the event and really kind of make Denver feel very good about it's not going to be just another county fair. In fact, the tagline for this year's county fair is fairly weird. Okay, so we're fairly weird, the Denver County Fair. Which, you know, if you're a marketer, you either like that or you hate it. That's the beauty of marketing. So anyway, we're excited about all that, and as things go, stock show we're on top of also. This is the time of year we really gear up for stock shows. So that planning is going well. Sponsorship has 75 of 100 sponsorship agreements that are up. So that's a little scary for me as CEO, but we have had very good success on that, and we're out presenting to people currently, and that's who I have to go see a little after 6 o'clock tonight, is one of our renewing sponsors to discuss their renewal. So I apologize that I'll have to leave here in 15 minutes, but I got to keep money coming in, that's for sure. That's what the board tells me anyway. So anyway, so we're very excited about things, and things are going great on the National Western Center side, is working with Kelly and his staff and CSU, so I don't really have anything updates on that, but I can tell you things are going very well. So happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Dates again for the county fair?
July 21 to the 23rd, Maria. Thank you for that. Yes.
Bob, just remind you, kids are free.
What's that?
Kids are free, right?
Kids under 3 are. Kids are. So kids bigger than 3 are only $3. $3. It's almost free.
That's almost free.
That's all you have, Dave.
You can make her work it off. In the role of Kelly today with the report from the corral, otherwise known as the NWCO, Gretchen Hara.
Hi everyone, my name is Gretchen Hallra, and thanks for having me tonight to stand in for Kelly. He is at his daughter's continuation, so she's leaving middle school and going on to high school, so didn't want to miss that. I think he has a continuation tomorrow too. And I do know we've got a number of agenda items on here already, so I'll keep the update from our office brief. It's most of what you're going to hear from us tonight is about all the preparations that are underway to prepare and staff up for the site and all of the work that's going to be coming beginning this fall. And I know that last time Kelly talked a little bit about our demo packages that would be coming through, and as we are reviewing proposals right now, we're in the middle of our contracting process, so as we know more, we'll come back and talk to you about the timeline for when you'll start to see that activity on the campus and make sure that there's a lot of awareness around that. I also know that Kelly talked last time about November 7th would be a day that we would come out and really have a public event around some of the early demolition that's needed to start construction for Brighton Boulevard. So that's largely what the early demolition will look like. Another piece of this that Kelly wanted me to mention was the recent activities on the renaming of Brighton Boulevard, and that in response, in support of actually a letter that was sent to the city from Jason Winkler and Bernard, that Kelly sent a letter on his own to issue support to start the process. That's a process, as a reminder, that's managed by the Department of Public Works. It's initiated upon this request and ultimately goes to property owners for a vote. So that's the stage that we're in right now, and we'll continue to keep you updated on that as well. On the agenda tonight, Erica will be talking about the branding process and survey. I'll be speaking both about the campus placemaking, the selection, which we are also about to start a contracting process around. And then I'm going to cover the agenda item for Michael Sapp, who's at a different event tonight, on some of the agriculture entities that we have reached out to and have a list of those. And then last, I know Eric was setting up to give you an update on the Delgany project. So that's really, it's just a lot of activity to help get all of the wheels moving on the work we have planned for the campus.
Any questions for Gretchen?
Can you elaborate on the agricultural, the meeting of agricultural partners and which you I reached out to, and can you talk about the levels of engagement and if there are commitments being made, or what that all looks like?
Yeah, if it's okay, it's one of the agenda items, so I have some more information.
That is related to that?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's very
Yep.
Any other questions? Vernon?
In reference to, the projects that are going to be coming up, I guess you said this fall, right, and how they're going to start them. So I assume that some design aspects have been put together as far as the infrastructure and the connectivity projects. When do you think that they're going to be showing us some kind of either diagrams or layouts or some information pertaining to that?
So that, I hate to defer to the agenda items, but that I'm going to talk about that more with the placemaking agenda item, and that I'll just kind of preface that by saying that we just went through the competitive selection process that Ann represented the CAC on, and we're about to enter the contracting phase. But we are going to bring Eric Anderson back here next month then to talk about schedule as we know more, but we're anticipating September. We're hoping for a July notice to proceed, and that at that point he's going to be rolling out our proposal for how all of the CAC engagement and how all the presentation of materials would happen. But generally it will look a lot like when we worked together on the last master plan, where we've got significant advance engagement and feedback with different groups. So I've got a little bit more material on that too, and I've got a handout that talks about the firm we hired, the contract amount, things like that.
John?
As a follow-up to Vern's concern, across the river, we're in the planning process relative to Heron Pond and Washington Street. And we need to find out when the decision will be made on the crossings over the river, where they're actually going to be.
Right.
So that we can engage with Public Works, Parks and Recs around the Heron Pond area, and also on Washington Street. That came up in our discussions this week, and it's important that we at least get a general idea. Specific would be great, as to where the actual crossing will take place.
Right, and I may ask for Todd Winskowski's help on that since he's more involved in that piece.
I
From the,
understand.
yeah, it's a great question though. We've tried to accelerate some of the conversation there because Matrix and who's the firm doing Washington Street with Matrix? Who's the prime? On Washington Street? Matrix is the prime. We had asked for some early scope additions to help us look at the geometries for where those landings and those connections to Washington Street would be. I'm not sure if they're, that was part of the original scope that we wanted to add to that. I'm not sure how far they are in that, but I do also know that to complete that work in placemaking, we've added 30% design work for the location of utilities and all the horizontal road and infrastructure. So that will be finalized as a part of the placemaking work. I was hoping to get an indication of some of the constraints and fatal flaws for that because of how the rail lays and the landings of the bridges, what's possible. But I don't have that here. That's something I can bring back to Kelly, and we can bring it next month, all the detail that we have right now.
Yeah, if we could have at least
Or earlier,
a
if we
general
can
idea
send
where
something.
the bridge will actually take the crossing.
Right,
Where the,
yeah. Let me follow up with that, and unfortunately, you are stuck with me tonight and not Kelly.
That's all
And I'm more on the financial end, but I'll bring that back to Kelly. If there's something that we have that we could send before next month, we will. Otherwise, I'll make sure that that's part of our agenda for next month.
thank you.
Yeah. Sorry I couldn't answer that with more certainty.
Any other questions for Gretchen? Okay, we'll have the CSU report this month by Maria.
I'm sorry, I apologize. So Jocelyn Hiddle's father died last week. I don't know if you know about him. He's a fairly renowned ag professor at Colorado State University. And so he passed away, so she's been, for obvious reasons, a little bit out of commission. So she asked if we would read what they've done in the last month. They have chosen their project manager for their 3 facilities. It's a group called ICON. If you're not familiar with them, there is a gentleman by the name of Tim Romani, who is the head of ICON. They've built numerous facilities in the Denver metropolitan area. I guess, iconic would be both Pepsi Center and Sports Authority Field. They have been the project managers for those projects. So they have been, that went through an RFP process, and they chose ICON to do that. The other thing that you needed to know about is that CSU's Water Center is working with Michael Sapp and the Office of Economic Development in the city to create a Water Fellows program for the summer where CSU students are paired with local high school students. And if Michael, I don't think Michael is coming today.
He's going to try to come.
Okay, so if he comes, we can ask him more about it and to be able to do that. That basically is trying to get local high school students involved in working with and developing a fellows program for the Water Resources Building. That is what she sent me. If there are any questions, I'll just take them down and we'll make sure that Jocelyn will be ready to answer them next month, or when Michael gets here, he can address more the Water Fellows Program. So that's what Jocelyn asked us to report on. Yeah, Armando.
Did she tell what school, what student, what high school?
I don't, but we can ask. She did not put that. Her email was pretty brief. I will ask what high schools are they working with. Any other questions?
I have a comment.
Yes, John.
I wasn't paying attention when you started. You said Jocelyn's father passed away.
Correct.
I think maybe we should send some card or something.
Okay. We'll get something going.
From the school, I think.
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah.
I just saw her the day before yesterday.
Yeah. She's trying to put it together, but yeah, he passed away. So that's great. We will do something. Anything else? Any other questions for Drew?
Oh, just, so the firm Icon that CSU hired them, is that like an architecture firm?
No, it's, I think it's Paul, since Paul was at Pepsi Center when Tim did Pepsi Center, it's more of a project management firm. They'll hire different architects, different contractors, depending on the project. They're currently building the CSU Stadium in Fort Collins. Let me be precise in my language. They're not building it. they're project managing the CSU Stadium. Mortensen is building, for example, as the contractor. So they use different contractors and different architects depending on the project. But they will be, for all practical purposes, the central air traffic controller of the project in terms of project management for the project. And they will have responsibility for all 3 facilities that CSU is building on this campus.
But they will be interfacing with CH2, who's the program manager for the whole
National Western
thing.
Center.
So a lot of times ICON is the CH2. Most
Right.
of the time they are that, Drew. But in this case, they're representing only CSU.
Right.
So.
Does that help you?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for Jocelyn that we'll jot down and send to her? Okay.
Okay, thank you. Nancy Walsh from the Denver Museum of Nature and Science.
So I'm happy to be back, and thanks for welcoming my colleagues who had fun the last couple of meetings being here. So I wanted to report on a few things that are happening that might be of interest to you all. First of all, thanks for those of you who came to Dia del Nino on April 30th. It was amazingly fun, and Leslie volunteered that day. We had, I was trying to text to get the exact number of people who were there, because I keep flipping in my mind between 12,000 and 18,000. But there were a lot of people there that day. It was a really fun, amazing event. And we're so fortunate to have great community collaborators across the whole community who basically just take over the institution. So it was really fun. And thanks to those of you who came and those of you who got out the word. We really appreciate it. The other thing I want to report on is something that came out of this group. And that is that this summer, I think I mentioned, and maybe some of my colleagues have mentioned as well, that we will have 14 students from Globeville, Elyria, Swansea elementary schools who will be coming to the museum summer camps. And Focus Points is NOLA. They're providing a bus to get the children there. And then they'll be participating in one of our summer camps via a scholarship. So it's pretty exciting. There's 14 of them. 7 are kindergarten and first grade, and 7 of them are second and third grade. So we'll be sure to get some pictures and bring some reports for you guys, because that's really fun. And the final thing I wanted to talk about is something, it's a pilot program that we're doing. And you know, our free days, we have a lot of them, and they can be very crowded, particularly on the weekends. And so we're trying to think about ways that we are more accessible to more people without always making it that you have to come on a free day. So for example, I think I shared with you a while ago that we have passes that you can check out at the library for a family membership that anyone can check out, and you can come to the museum. But what we're piloting now is through the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. So for people who participate in SNAP with their EBT card, they and up to 10 people with them can get into the museum for $1. And so that's starting on May 27th, and we'll be running that through the end of the year. And that's just to see, does it work, doesn't it? Does anybody take advantage of it? And so, as I often do, I would love your help with getting the word out if you know of any organizations or people. And I will have this paper flyer. I'm also delighted to share it with you all electronically. So those are some of the things that are happening at the museum right now. And of course, we continue to meet with all of the other partners here to talk about what they're doing. You know, in the end, what we're really focusing on right now is building relationships within the community, and then we'll be responding as CSU and the Stock Show and other people begin to build these buildings and the city in terms of how we activate and make it vibrant for all of the people who want to come. So that's us. Does anybody have any questions?
Thank you, Nancy. And we don't have a report from History Colorado. So we just have a real quick agenda item. Liz wanted me to clarify something from the last meeting about the name, the suggestion for the name at the RTD station. At the beginning of the meeting, when we had the discussion, you'll remember that we initially had this group had decided that it would be suggested to RTD that the station be named NWC at Elyria. Toward the end of our meeting, Candy C. DeBaca tossed in, how about NWC at Historic Elyria? And I don't think we ever came to a resolution on that, so which one is it?
Historic.
Historic?
Can we have a show of hands?
Yeah, can we have a show of hands?
Go with historic, I think that's great.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, historic it is. Thanks. That was quick. So, Erica Martinez in the NWC Branding Process and Survey.
Usually print it out, but. Hi, guys.
I turned it back on. Maybe I didn't do it right.
Tell us about your house.
My favorite color. Whoa, there you go. Hi, guys. So Kelly mentioned, I think it was last month, that we were getting ready to start our branding process. So how many of you have ever been part of a branding process at work or with an organization? Yeah, some of you, right? So for those of you who haven't, it's actually a really incredible opportunity. And just like our engineers really geek out on, plans and all of these things, this is what I geek out on. So branding is really a great opportunity to it's the face of the National Western Center, and a really great opportunity to showcase, provide a feeling, a look of what this place is going to be. And so we started our branding process already. Since it's called the National Western Center, what we're really looking to do is really create that look and feel of the logo and the color scheme and those kinds of things that we are going to utilize when we are out in the community, when we create any documents, when we create any presentations, and when we perhaps have t-shirts, all of that, so that it really does have a unique and unified look to the National Western Center. So Liz Adams sent out a survey to all of you last week that I hope you took, but if you didn't, if you are like me and said, oh, I'll do that in just a little bit, and then forgot, I actually brought some surveys that you could fill out. So if you haven't, take one, and then I also have a Spanish version for our folks who are Spanish speakers. So it will take you a little bit. You'll have some time, I think, at the end of today to fill that out, and I've got some pens too in case you don't have one. But once again, we have used sort of this look and feel since the master plan. We took the sort of what we ended up calling a logo from the master plan, and we used it as a logo. We kind of kept the same colors, the oranges, the browns, that kind of thing. And so we have an opportunity to recreate that. And that's really what the survey will help do. And so it asks you questions about, if the National Western Center was a person, like what would that actually, what are the characteristics? So if you can fill that out, if you haven't done that already. In terms of the process, we're doing some one-on-one interviews with partners and individuals who have been part of the evolution of the National Western Center. And then we also, we have the survey, and that's really to get input from the general public into it. And that'll include, students and residents, extension of our partners, so their employees, and really just anyone in general who is interested in helping us shape that brand can take this survey. So the next step after this survey is that the agency that we've hired to help us with communications will then provide us with some potential logos of what it'll look like, and then we'll provide some feedback. We expect that the logo and the branding process will actually end sometime mid-August. And then we've got a rollout plan to be able to introduce it to the community, and that will actually happen during the 2C celebration that we are planning for later on in the year, and that'll happen sometime in November. So not only will we celebrate the anniversary of the 2C campaign, but we'll also roll out the new brand to the community, and then we'll also introduce the 2.0 version of the website, which will have a ton more information about the project, how people can get involved for procurement. For folks who are interested in procurement, it will have information about that. For people who want to get involved and donate and give to the campaign, they'll also have the opportunity to do that. So it'll be a robust website that will evolve over time, but it really will have a lot of information that right now is not available. So that will happen in November, but we've got to do a few things to get ready for that. Any questions? Yes.
So long ago and far away, in one of the discussions on this group, the suggestion of having a contest, especially among the high schools and the colleges and that, for the logo, was just kind of kicked around for a little bit. And I thought that was a pretty good idea, and I don't know if there's a possibility that could be part of this, but I mean, could it?
Yeah, we definitely gave that some thought. The brand goes beyond a logo, and so what we really needed is a little bit more structure and provide our partners with some structure around how to use the brand. And so that's one thing that we had internally worked on, trying to figure out how do we continue to have the same message? How do we have the same look and feel? So that when CSU goes out into the community, they look the same as if I go out into the community, Denver Museum of Nature and Science. And so a process like that in creating the logo wouldn't provide the tools that we have, that we need in order for us to really look and feel like one big group with all of our partners. So we elected to go this route and gather feedback from community. They still, we sent it out to Bruce Randolph, and there's classrooms of students providing feedback that will be included in the process. Yeah, I also like that idea, but it goes beyond that a little bit more. Yes? So the survey, the company that we've hired is CIG Communications, and then they will, all of the, we don't know, the only thing we know on the survey is who, if you're a student or if you're a resident or if you're a partner, like those are, and that's only if you go online. I mean, if you fill it out here, it's considered just, it doesn't matter whether you're a resident or a business owner, it's all the same thing. But we've created a list of organizations and partners and opportunities for us to push it out into the community. And so we are working with CIG along with all of our partners to push it out among those partners and organizations that those partners work with to be able to, have a wide range of reach.
Any other questions for Erica? Thank you.
So please fill it out. I know you'll have some time at the end of today to be able to fill it out, and I'll stay and grab those that haven't done it online.
Thank you. And Candy, welcome. Come find a place at the table, please. You sure? No, you gotta come to the table. Because you're gonna have more questions. And by the way, the group decided to go with NWC at Historic Elyria as our suggestion to RTD. You should know if you stay back there, I might not see you have a question. Just saying. Okay, Gretchen, with campus placemaking RFQ/P selection.
Thank you.
Just so everybody knows, Ann Hayes was going to be here tonight. She had surgery. She's all right. Everything's good. She says whatever, but she's recovering. And so she could not be here today. And in your packet, we also included the press release that the city put out on this. So just wanted you to know that Ann was not dissing us. She's just recovering from surgery.
you. So this is an update to let you know the status of placemaking, and we've been talking about this for quite some time. It's pretty fundamental to getting the campus delivered the right way, and we've been talking about the need to refine and improve upon the master plan with greater detail. So that's what this accomplishes. And the top of the handout talks about some of the key tasks within the scope of work. So that's probably the first place we're going to look. But before I do that, I wanted to talk about who we hired first, because we went through a competitive procurement process. I believe we received 7 proposals and had a combined team for the interviews that included the city, Colorado State University, National Western Stock Show, and then we also had Ann as a CAC representative. And a lot of this process has and will parallel what happened on our master plan. That's our intent. We are very, very pleased to have selected MIG as our consultant. Jay Renkin is here in the audience, and we're thrilled to have him on board. He's done some great work with the city in the past, and it was a very competitive process, and they were really stand out in their proposals, so we're eager to work with them. I also wanted to point out that Eric Schafrin is here, and in addition to Eric Anderson, it is both the Erics that will be keeping you up to speed as we finish our contracting process and are able to start with the work and roll out proposals and plans and how we engage going forward. The key elements in the contract scope of work, so it's first the facilities program refinement for those phase 1 and 2 facilities, the campus public realm study, so that's any public space on the campus, it's campus-wide. When we think about the plazas and the river, anything that's going to be publicly used, to start to define what that looks like, how it's used, how it's sized, how it's activated. 3, campus and building design standards. So these will be campus-wide design standards and really something that applies as we move through future phases of the campus too, to create a common look and feel for the entire site, and especially to create, with so many entities active on the site, to create some commonality there. And last, 30% infrastructure design. This was something we had not contemplated early on in this placemaking study, but it helps accelerate the construction schedule, and any acceleration of schedule reduces escalation in costs. So this was an add to help us get to 30% design, as I mentioned before when we talked with John about the bridge landings, for utilities and roads and all those horizontal elements. It really locks those into place so that folks then can start to place buildings and other uses on the site. So that's a pretty important piece to expedite. This one-pager gives you some of the statistics around the contract. We are hoping for a notice to proceed end of July 2017. Just really depends on the city's lengthy contracting process, which we'll try to move quickly on. Contract capacity is $5 million. I'd like to tell Jay that it's not a budget of $5 million. It's a task order-based contract, so we'll be approving those as we go forward in conjunction with CAC, with all the groups that we set up to help manage the work. We'll be able to see the task orders as they come out and what that means in terms of the work that will be performed and the cost that is assigned to that. But this capacity gives us the ability to work under that limit with City Council permissions. And it will continue to be managed by Kelly and Stephanie Reed, our program director, and also she's part of our Public Works team, which is our contracting entity. And it had an MWBE goal of 24%, and that was assigned to the project as we went through goals committee of the city. So that's some of the background. Just to emphasize, notice to proceed, we're hoping for at the end of July, which means late summer and fall, we'd be able to get started on the work. So we'll have Eric Anderson, along with Eric Schafrin and Jay. They are due up, and we'd like to have an agenda item for them, if possible, next time, so that they can start to walk through what process looks like and talk about engagement and get feedback to make sure that we're setting this up for the best start possible. Are there any questions on this one?
Just
Yeah.
along the lines that we referred to earlier about the bridges,
Yeah.
any info on that, you could just forward it to Lisa Solar, because she's the consultant on both projects. And that won't put a bind on. Kelly, you guys got enough work to do anyway. I mean, I realize that.
There's some work, yeah.
We need to get an idea where that bridge is gonna be so that we can, keep things at snuff on the other side of the river as well.
Yeah,
So
let me,
if you could just forward that to Lisa, and she could get it to us in an appropriate manner.
I will follow up, I
No
wish I
big
knew
deal.
more, but I'm going to pass that along and then commit to you that everything that we can bring forward, as fast as we can bring forward, we will.
We don't want to make you do any more work than you already have.
We are willing to do
Just
the
general
work.
information.
Yeah, no, we'll get you what we can, but there's a lot of work to do at this point, and that's what we signed up for, so here we go.
Any other questions for Gretchen? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to,
Oh, and the next one.
well, Michael's here, though, if you want Michael to do it.
Oh, he's going to allow me to do this, which I appreciate. Thank you, Michael. So there was a question that came up, and I've got a little bit of a description to read since I think it provides a good summary of what this outreach has been and to AE's question. So there was some outreach that was done to agriculture-related associations. So in July of 2016, Kelly, on behalf of the mayor and the National Western Center office, sent out letters to 81 agricultural associations. And that was really just an announcement that funding had been passed by voters to implement the National Western Center Master Plan, and that we formed our National Western Center office. And what I'm passing out now is a list of all of those folks that we reached out to. So let me make sure. I may have passed too many to the right. We may need to loop them back. A couple more. What you'll see highlighted in yellow are the folks that we received a response from and actually had some communication with. So the letter that we sent requested the Ag Associations help as thought partners. And is the letter in the back of that packet? It is.
Yes.
So it's both the list of the associations and the letter that was sent. And collectively, these associations, pardon? We're out on that side. Okay, I think they're going to pass them around. So they represent hundreds of thousands of farmers, ranchers, and businesses related to food production, and many have been actively involved throughout National Western Stock Show history. What the letter does is it encourages associations to visit the website and reach out if they wanted to discuss the project further. So to AE, to your question, no commitments were made in any of these discussions. It was really to make sure people knew that we'd had a successful ballot measure, that we had formed an office, that we were starting to mobilize some resources around this project. So the 15 organizations that were highlighted contacted the mayor's office of the National Western Center, and Kelly and Barb Frommel, who I believe has been to this to CAC meetings in the past, our director of strategic partnerships. She joined many of those meetings, and they had discussions. And a few organizations, including the Colorado Beef Council, expressed some interest in opening small offices at or near the center. That was really an expression of interest. Others suggested that they might like to talk to their members about the project, but there was nothing beyond that kind of discussion. Armando, do you have a question?
No, just a comment. I know that Alice is on the divide and around the world is the interest of the city. Here it breaks down local, and then I see regional and national. And I'm wondering how much outreach did you guys go beyond? I mean, did you go all over the world? I imagine you did.
Oh, these were just letters. Yeah, so there will be, but the last thing I wanted to share is there will be a follow-up round of letters sometime this summer. And what we'll do again is we'll share with you the letter and the folks we're outreaching to. But anything that would look like a deeper conversation is something we'd have to engage with our partners more seriously on, with the CAC on. This is mostly to make sure that folks know that this project is ongoing, and if they have ideas or interests that they're bringing them to us, if they'd like to, I know that the WSSA website is up for financial contributions. I'm sure Paul and Pat would love a contribution, but at this point it's really just informational. But we'll share that as we get a second round of letters out. It's to stay present in folks' minds. Are there questions about this?
So the original list that was posted was, I think, like 104, There's a difference between the associations and private firms that are part of the agricultural industry, whether it's local, national, or international. So that's a conversation I hope can be brought to the table, because the whole reality of agriculture and its evolution is really what this is all about. And I just not meaning to be contentious, but I know that there's you know, with the placemaking, with the branding, there's the elements of selling for commercial purposes and marketing positions at the National Western that will go to private industry likely. I don't know if that's planned on continuing to be a part of the financing and that kind of thing, but I just want to make sure that we have a conversation, because there's really different agricultural movements around how you know, feed the masses, so to speak, and how you create local ag economy. And I just want it to feel it's a rich part of the conversation in every partnership. So
I can answer that in part, and part of it we'll work through together. But as placemaking continues, one of the things we need to discover is when you look at the size of the facilities that are planned to generate the visitors and activities that are already contemplated and including in our RTA, our Regional Tourism Act funding application, there's a significant amount of space, and most of the space is to accommodate these massive buildings and then the public spaces that are needed. So, for instance, in our Next Generation Agribusiness study that I've presented on a few times here, we've really talked about an area around the site. The campus itself has to be spoken for first for the uses that are already contemplated. So there hasn't been any active planning to bring on any private partners. But I do believe that in the placemaking study, if there is additional space that could be programmed, that's a discussion that the placemaking team needs to have about where and how that could be located. It would be a wholly separate conversation about when and how to approach people to come on. It's such a complicated conversation right now with the current funding partners and making sure their needs are met on the campus first. I will commit to on Kelly's behalf that before we reach out to those organizations, we'll share that list with you so that you're not hearing about it afterwards.
Can I ask a clarification, AE? So you're talking about engaging the private sector entities that actually are in the business. I wasn't here last month because of my son's graduation, but and I know Jocelyn wasn't here because that's when her father was going into hospice, but I think Paul touched on it. But I think when Jocelyn gets back, we need to probably have a full, more robust conversation, because they've engaged former Secretary Tom Velasic, who's been Ag Secretary for Obama for 8 years. He presented at the National Western Board of Directors, not presented, he came to the National Western Board of Directors the day they announced it, and it was pretty inspirational to have him listen to him talk about ag and the role ag plays in all kinds of things and what they're planning on doing. So maybe what we need to do, if I think I know where you're going and what you want to do, I think we need to engage Jocelyn into that conversation, because I think it's broader than what you're talking about. Yeah. So, so I think that's, and I think Velasic, I mean, he's talking about, you know, CSU is talking about launching the first ever serious water summit, national water summit. Velasic is talking about launching the state of agriculture in the next 50 years, and that become an annual symposium that CSU hosts that would be an international event, right, to talk about what the future looks like in terms of ag. And they're thinking through some things. We'll have, I think by the June meeting we may have more details on what they're thinking through.
So I appreciate that elaboration, and this to me is very much the kind of content that we should be out in the neighborhoods with direct engagement for that content and to have that conversation. And I feel like that's kind of a missing link in this. I mean, it's great that he came to the board of directors, but we could have had an event and gotten a couple hundred people out here in the neighborhoods to be a beneficiary of that direct.
Yeah, and unfortunately that was a last minute thing, so she just sat.
I'm
yeah,
talking idealistically,
right,
but in principle, I mean, these are the kinds of things you can bring 5 classrooms immediately. You can do. This is to me where the real value system. Who is this really for? And if you're going to have symposiums and that, I hope we have them out here, not downtown. Right. You know, and I think, and I hope we have real direct beneficial streams of things that can be delineated into the populations right adjacent. So, I mean, that's all good news. I just think it's time to root it a
Yeah, and thank you, Maria. I get so focused from the city's perspective as the entity that's going to let the construction contracts, like placemaking and then the follow-up contracts. So I tend to answer things from a capital build perspective and less of a programming perspective initially. So thank you, Maria.
Gretchen, that's
Yeah.
the way it's been. It's not, there's a natural sequence of events here, and that's okay.
Right.
But I feel like the more we can all step away from that into this larger engagement, the better, especially as we go into the branding. And these are the, what I think of as soft programming, beneficial right now. We don't have to wait till the buildings are built.
So I would just add that first task of facilities program refinement will be part of that engagement on placemaking too. So there are a couple of paths to get started there in addition to the discussions on water. I think there's a broader programming discussion that happens too.
Any other questions for Gretchen? Okay, thank you. We'll have the boy, I can't even say that, NDCC update.
Oh, thanks, everyone. Great to be here. I'm Todd Winskowski, Deputy Director at NWC-CAC. So we just wanted to provide a couple of updates on a few things. The first two, many folks in the room are involved with. So as John and others have alluded to, we have the active planning projects going on both on Washington Street and here in Pond right now. So we're making great progress. I want to thank everyone in the room who's been participating in those. We're about a third of the way, I'd say, through the current planning process. We just had a really good set of public meetings for both. We had in early May, we had the Washington Street first public meeting, and then May 13th out here we had the event at Hare Pond in Northside Park, and had great participation in those. So I would encourage everyone to stay really involved right now, because now is the phase in the planning where the consultant teams have a lot of work to do right now, because they're preparing for the next round of public meetings and then continuation of the working group and steering committee meetings. And it's really the point where they're going to roll up their sleeves and come forward with and engage the community in concepts and get feedback on those in preparation for that second public meeting. Right now, I think both are targeting July. I don't know the exact dates yet, or early August, I think, for that second round. And then they're trending toward, the final public meeting in the fall. So they're working on those. So anyway, now is the real active time. So stay engaged between now and fall, and continue to provide the feedback you're giving on those projects. The other thing, any questions on those? I know a lot of people are involved. Councilman Brooks.
Yeah, John Zapian and other folks at that Washington meeting just were saying, hey, we got to do a better job of outreach. I'm just wondering, in this next round for July meeting, what's changed?
So one thing we are going to, I asked the team to do mailings. That's one specific thing that we did not do last time. They're going to continue to go door to door on that one as well. So those are I know the mailings is one new one as well. So any other ideas folks have, certainly let us know. I mean, I know they're out there taping doors.
I just want to clarify something. I went around later, and it's true what they said at the meeting, because people found tape. They had taped the flyers, and I don't know if wind blew or what, kids came or whatever, but we found in several locations tapes, and then I asked people in different businesses, and they said they went around. And I was concerned because people at that meeting said they didn't know about it. So it's cleared up, at least.
Well, we always try new avenues. We're continuing to text, for the
like
speed of population.
Finger anybody, but it was of some concern because people at that meeting said, what happened there? They didn't let us know anything about it, so that's one reason I brought it up. But we went around and checked, and they did do what they said they did.
Well, maybe if we mail.
Yeah, we're going to try that next as well. So we'll see, and then continue to improve. The other is great news. I think Anna mentioned it at the Washington Street meeting about the recent council action that approved the additional funding through the rescind and reappropriate process for both Washington Street and 47th and York. We actually sent out some emails about that, and we'll be putting it on our website. So that was great news. For those who don't know, there was about $2.4 million total that was allocated in 2015 to a project actually right over here in National Western Center. That was before 2C had passed. So since that time, that funding was not needed. The purpose of that funding was to promote the connectivity through the center of National Western for the neighborhoods. So because the funding was not needed, we had the opportunity to go back and make a request to reappropriate those funds to 2 transformative projects that supported the notion of connectivity in the neighborhoods. And the 2 logical candidates were 47th New York and Elyria Swansea, and then Washington Street and the Globeville side. So I think most of you received, we have $1.6 million going to Washington Street to be able to proceed into preliminary design after we finish this current effort, which we anticipate could start late this year, early next year. And then the other one is $800,000 that will go to allow some early action utility relocations, a gas regulator, over where the 47th New York pedestrian bridge will go on that side. So that's a great move there because that gets a utility element out of the way so that if the funding becomes available, we can move faster into implementation on that and don't have to wait for utility relocation. So that was great news for both those projects. So we thank Council for their support on that, allowing us to do that and move forward. Any questions on those?
Any questions? Okay, it looks like there are no questions. Thanks, Todd. For everyone's favorite topic, and probably our most odoriferous one, the delegating interceptor follow-up.
Yeah, no, that's exactly what I said.
I'm glad someone caught that. Thank you. Although Eric's not odoriferous.
Eric, can I ask you to hold for a minute? Sure. So, can we, Councilman Brooks and we were just talking because we were looking for stuff. I think it's important because this committee cares about it, and I'm looking at you, Vern, that we get an update from the councilman before he leaves of where the Greater Denver Bonds issue is and where it is in the process of what's being, where it looks like things are being approved or not.
Yeah.
So,
You pass that mic. And I can just stop.
so sorry to hijack the agenda here, Eric. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Eric. Hey, I just wanted to give you guys a quick update of where we are in the GO bond, the general obligation bond meeting and process. One, we found that our general bond capacity is between 800 to 900 million. We have been talking about 500 to 600 million, but with the recent assessments, and we, our CFO's office got a chance to do some analysis, and we could max the credit card out to up to $900 million if we so decide to do that. The 5 subcommittees on the GO bond have all made their decisions and now referred them up to the executive committee, which I serve on. The 5 subcommittees are safety, city-owned buildings, transportation mobility, parks, and what am I missing? Safety, parks, arts and culture. Thank you, Michael Satt. Yeah. So you should know that. So all of those committees have, put their recommendations up to us in sort of 3 tiers. The first tier being their first priority, second tier, and a third tier. I want to talk to you about a couple projects that are in the first tier for Elyria Swansea, and that's the 47th in York pedestrian bridge. That is in the first tier. That's not, I don't want to say it's guaranteed, but it has a great opportunity to get funded. Another project that's in the first tier is basically pedestrian and bike connections in Elyria Swansea. Pedestrian bike connections basically connecting every sidewalk in Elyria Swansea, and that's for $15 million. That's in the first tier. The Washington Street deal is, I believe it's in the second tier for transportation mobility. And also 4400, 4400 Lincoln is is in a lower kind of second tier. And it's really unfortunate because we lost our Office of this is me being honest. We lost our Office of Economic Development Director. There's no real vision from the Office of Economic Development, even though that there's a lot of pressure from the community saying, hey, we want to see this used for the community. And so with folks a part of that city-owned buildings committee, they did not rise that deal up. And so Councilwoman Ortega and I are working on a plan of how we can do something on the council floor. It's going to go to the executive committee. We make a recommendation to the mayor. The mayor then sends it to city council. City council has the opportunity to amend the package before it goes to the voters in November. And so that is the process. We have 2 more meetings for executive committee to deliberate. Those are free, open to the public, transparent. I'll make sure that I'll send an email out on those dates so that you guys have those. You're welcome to come. Oscar has come and testified, and we also had a whole community from Swansea Elementary come and testify, did an amazing job. So you guys are all, AE, you were there. You guys are all welcome to come and testify to any of those meetings. Any questions on that? Specific questions? Okay. Carrie, and then.
Are the recommendations from the subcommittees available publicly?
Yeah, those are all public. Okay. That's right. Yeah, first, second, and third tier.
Okay. Where do we find it?
And where is that?
Yeah, yes.
So why don't we do this to make it
I will email everyone with a link
well, yeah,
straight to it to DenverGov.
If you go on denvergov.org and search 2017 Go Bond, it'll come up, go to materials. You'll see the agendas. And Friday, Courtney said that well, it should be tomorrow. She thinks the minutes from the last executive committee and the report out are supposed to go up Friday.
Yeah, and those have been taking a little longer, so if they're not up, you guys will get a link from me, from my office tomorrow.
you send it to us, we'll send it to the entire
Okay,
NWC-CAC
great,
distribution.
great.
And we'll do it tomorrow.
And the minutes, yes ma'am.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions for the councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You're welcome.
All right,
I yield
Eric,
my time.
you're on.
Good evening. So it's 20 to 7, so I guess that means we have 50 minutes to do this. No, I'm kidding. We'll try and get out of here. We'll try and get out of here relatively quickly.
No,
So,
Eric, just one note before
Yes.
you start. East High School is in the process of graduating at the Coliseum, and we don't necessarily want to have traffic collision with them, just for the record.
I couldn't agree more. So is everyone else hearing that feedback? That's very annoying. Let me try the other. All right, let's see, is that any better? Yes, that is better. So I'm Eric Shaffrin with the Office of the National Western Center, and I'm joined here by Kurt Thompson from AECOM and Mark Naylor from Civitas. And thank you for humoring us on talking about the Delgany Interceptor again. When we came last, we promised that we'd come back and solicit feedback. So this is the opportunity for us to get feedback from everybody around the table here about specifically the study that we're working on as it relates to the riverfront. So I'll walk through, what I'm going to do is I'll walk through the alternatives very quickly that we reviewed last time, and then I want to talk a little bit about the evaluation process that we're going through to evaluate these riverfront redevelopment alternatives, and then we have a little activity, so a feedback session that I'll walk through, but this is an opportunity for everyone here on the CAC to help us understand what your priorities are for the riverfront, not necessarily programmatic, but general sense and feel for the riverfront, and I'll talk about why not programmatic in a second. So as a reminder, the master plan did not fully address the Delgany Interceptor pipes. It basically said the pipes are there, we plan on berming over them or covering them over with dirt. and leaving them in place. And so how that impacts the riverfront is now for us to analyze and understand how that impacts our ability to redevelop the riverfront. You can see on the image to your right, the red line is the Delgany Interceptor that runs along the river, just adjacent to the riverbank. And so the area that we're studying is the shaded area along the northern portion of the red line and then up to the north. So the goals of this study, as a reminder, are three things. Number one, it's to assess the technical and financial feasibility of installing a sewer heat recovery system onto the Delgany Interceptor. So that's a system that would capture the heat that is in those pipes and use that heat to heat our campus. We're not going to be talking about that portion of the study this evening. We're going to be focused more on the latter two, which is number two, assess the technical and financial feasibility of relocating the Delgany Interceptor pipes from their current position to a different location on the campus. And then number three, to assess the impact of a potential realignment of those pipes on our ability to redevelop that riverfront. So if we move the pipes to a different location, how does that impact what we can or cannot do on that riverfront open space? So this study is not, and this is important, the study is not a programming exercise. So we are not analyzing specific program elements that we want to bring to the riverfront. We're not talking about, do we want to put a park there or a field there or a pavilion there? That's not what we're looking at right now, and this is also not a design exercise. So the images that you see here to my left, to your right, they look like design images, but they're there to be illustrative. They're there to help us understand, if we were to put the pipe in position A, what does that do to our ability to redevelop? And we will study programming and design later when we do campus placemaking. So what this study will do is, number one, it will enable the partners to make decision on the location of the pipes. So where are we going to put the pipes? And the reason why we keep coming back to talk to the CAC about it is because it's likely one of the first things that we have to do on the campus. Because if we are going to move the pipes, and that's what we're going to be analyzing, then we have to do it first. It has to be one of the very first things we do on the campus, which is why we're so focused on it right now. It furthers our analysis of sewer heat recovery. We'll take the results of this study and then feed it into a further process with our regen team to further understand sewer heat recovery and whether it will work for the campus. And then lastly, it will inform the campus placemaking study, which we're going to be launching in July and August, on the spaces available within the riverfront for program. And in campus placemaking is when we will truly be engaging in the programming effort for the riverfront. So we've gone through, Kurt and Mark have gone through a very extensive process of analyzing these pipes and analyzing the impact of the location of the pipes on the riverfront. And what we came up with are 5 potential alignments of the pipes. So 5 different places that we could potentially put the pipes, one of them being staying right where they are, and then 4 additional locations. And then based on those 5 pipe alignments, we came up with 5 different scenarios for redevelopment of the riverfront. And I'll walk through those very quickly. So the five alignments are, starting from the left, is in situ. So that's where the pipe is currently. Alignment B is moving the pipes into the open space. So moving the pipes slightly to the east, but still inboard of the future National Western Drive. So somewhere in kind of the no man's land between where National Western Drive will eventually sit, which is to the west of where it is currently, and the existing location of the pipes. Alignment C is putting them actually under the new National Western Drive. Alignment D is running them through the future stockyards. And alignment E is running them adjacent to the future consolidated railroad, which is much farther to the east. So what we determined very quickly is that alignments D and E are infeasible. So we have fatal flawed them out. They cannot happen. We can't put pipes under for a whole host of programmatic and operational reasons, we can't put pipes underneath the stockyards, and we realistically can't put pipes for structural reasons adjacent to the railroad because they would have to bridge a 300-foot plaza, which I can get into more detail, but we determined those were infeasible. And then lastly, an alternative. So those were alignments, and now looking at the riverfront alternative. So the impact of the location of the pipes on our ability to redevelop the riverfront. We determined very quickly that actually what the master plan calls for which is leaving the pipes in place and berming over them with dirt, basically covering them over with dirt, we determined very quickly that that is infeasible as well. Because what would happen is if you cover it over with dirt, you have to fill, you have to maintain an appropriate grade on the west side of those pipes. It can't be burned over and then fall off a cliff. That's just dangerous. So if you maintain appropriate grading down to the river, the dirt would actually end up into the channel, which we can't do for a number of reasons. It has an impact on floodplain, and we're committed to not impacting the 100-year floodplain, so we can't do it, so that alignment is nixed as well. So what that leaves us with are 4 alternatives for riverfront redevelopment. I'm going to run through this very quickly. After we're done with this, Kurt and Mark are going to be here with me, and we can answer any questions that folks have about the specific alternatives. So I'm going to run through this really quick, and then I'll talk about our analysis of it. So alternative 1 is leaving the pipes in place, and what we realize very quickly is that by leaving the pipes in place, you have a high point that you have to bridge in order to get people over to see the river or touch the river. So what you see here in section at the top is what we think, in order to make this a grade A open space or a grade A park, you would have to provide some way, in this case an elevated walkway, to get folks out over the river. And those are some precedent photography that illustrates that. Alternative 2 is moving the pipes to the east within the open space, which presents the opportunity, my apologies, no, alternative 2 is still keeping the pipes in place, but burying the east side of the pipes. So not burying up and over, but burying the east side of the pipes and essentially flattening the grade between National Western Drive and the pipes. And what this enables is the opportunity to have lots of flat open space to the east of the pipes, but it still presents the same obstacle in getting folks from the east of the pipes down to the river. So again, you see those elevated walkways. The alternative 4 is moving the pipes into the open space. And what this does, by pulling the pipes back to the east, this enables us to graduate the sloping down to the river a little more easily. What we have to overcome are some water quality challenges. We had designated in the master plan that the area to the east of the pipes would be the primary location for water quality on the campus. So that's essentially cleaning the water before it ends up in the river. So what we have to do is come up with creative solutions, and this is one example that Civitas put forward, which is a series of small ponds that become the water quality ponds before stormwater reaches the river. And what you can see there is, you can see the red line that you see in the image is the existing grade. And what you see where towards the middle there's a hump, and you can see that the slope is gradually, and the hump is what it is currently, and you can see the slope gradually reaches down towards the water in this scenario, and those 2 small circles is the proposed location of the pipe in this alignment. The last alternative is alternative 5, and this is actually putting the pipe underneath National Western Drive, and by moving the pipe completely out of the open space, it affords likely the most flexibility when it comes to redevelopment of the open space. It presents some operational challenges for Metro, because having a pipe underneath a roadway means that if they ever need to maintain that pipe, they have to close down portions of the road in order to do that, so it presents some operational challenges. But again, in section you can see it provides for the most gradual ability to slope down towards the river. So, and then lastly, in this image you can see, and this is really the focus the focus of Civitas's work on the riverfront, is developing an understanding of grade and topography in the various alignments of the pipe. And so here in cross-section, alternative 1 is at the top left, alternative 5 is at the bottom right. You can see in alternative 1, and alternative 2, you have a relatively steep bank coming down towards the river. You have to get up and over those pipes. And in alternative 4 and alternative 5, the pipes are somewhat moved out of the way, so you have greater opportunity to slope it gradually down towards the river. So those are the alternatives that we have come up with. And what we're looking at now is developing an evaluation. We developed an evaluation process of these alternatives, and this is independent of cost. So we're not approaching cost at this point. We're looking at essentially qualitative analysis of these alternatives. And we came up with a series of yes/nos, so either and these are basically somewhat fatal flaws. If it's a no, then it doesn't work. If it's a yes, then it kind of crosses that hurdle, and you can then look at the qualitative analysis. But on the yes-no, we have to look at floodplain impacts, and we're modeling that right now, so we don't have answers yet on the floodplain impacts of any of these alternatives. We will shortly, in a week or two, have those results. Maintenance access is key for Metro, so if it works, great. If it doesn't, then we can't do it. Sewer heat recovery, again, this is really, does the alignment, does the alternative enable us to pursue sewer heat recovery? Doesn't mean we're going to, but at least we want to maintain the option, and all four do. And then general feasibility, are there any other fatal flaws that we see in any of these alternatives that might strike them from our option list, and none of them do. So the next are the qualitative analyses. So number one, odor impact. Do we have the ability, does the location of the pipe enable us or not enable us to mitigate odors? We know, and Metro is planning on odor mitigation in this part of the city, and so we just want to make sure that all of these alternatives enable us to mitigate odors, and they do. Conformance with the master plan. So the master plan outlines a lot of goals, soft goals, for the riverfront open space, and we want to make sure, we want to understand how each one of these alternatives enables or doesn't enable the pursuit of those goals. So you can see with some of these, the yellow is green is great, and red is not so good. So create flat open space that can be used for festivals, events, informal activities compared to other alternatives. So alternatives 1 and 2, because of the location of the pipes, give us the least amount of flexibility when it comes to creating flat open spaces. Alternatives 4 and 5 provide more opportunity. The next one, flexibility to accommodate the master plan water quality volumes. In general, we believe that all 4 of these alternatives will enable us to meet the master plan goals, the regeneration goals for water quality. Compatible with easement and entitlement restrictions on programming. So does the location of the pipe, which by virtue of the operational needs of that pipe, will have to have an easement above it, and in an easement area you can't put a building, you can't plant trees, so would easements prevent our ability to redevelop the pipe? And it's only option number 4 which really presents the challenge, because where we would want to be putting flat open space, we'll have pipes, and it limits our opportunity to develop within that flat open space somewhat. So a little bit less opportunity than alternatives 1, 2, and 5. Provides visitors with varied forms of visual and physical access to the river. So as we saw in the images, 1 and 2, you got to get over the hump. You got to get over the pipes. So it's certainly more challenging to get over those pipes and down to the river, whereas 4 and 5 provide more opportunity. Connectivity from other open spaces within the National Western Center, which is a key component of the master plan. Yes, it provides us with connectivity. And then places for education and outreach. And so given the challenges associated with access, we think that that 1 and 2 do provide slightly less opportunity for education when trying to harness the educational opportunity of the river, because if you want to have education opportunities at the river, and it's harder to get there, so that provides less opportunity. So the last few, and I'm almost done, sustainability. Does it help the city reach 2020 sustainability goals related to water quality? All 4 of them do. Contributes to healthy and diverse river habitat. So this is as a function of our ability to restore habitat along the river. 1 and 2 provide slightly less opportunity because there's less space to work in, and 4 and 5 provide more. On safety and access, so again, we saw 1 and 2 are more challenged when it comes to access, and because of that high barrier, we think that there may also be slightly more safety concerns associated with 1 and 2 as well. And then habitat restoration, is it compatible with design solutions that include riparian habitat restoration? So 1 and 2, again, less area, so less opportunity. And then create adverse impacts relative to the goals of the Army Corps Urban Waterways Study. So this is the study that's ongoing that the city is doing with the Army Corps of Engineers on the 6-mile stretch of the Platte River. And one of their goals is to protect communities from floodplain impact, and so by not moving the pipes, which is one of their goals, is to move the pipes, by leaving the pipes in place, it limits the potential opportunities that they are seeing within their study. So that is the analysis that we have gone through. But now we'd like to take an opportunity after this for a few things. Number one, Kurt, Mark, and I will be here to answer any questions that you have about these. Kurt can talk your ear off about hydraulics and technical feasibility of wastewater pipes, and Mark can teach you the ins and outs of good landscape design. So any questions that you have about these alternatives, please ask, and then we'd like your feedback. So we've prepared a table, and the table has 5 categories that we'd like you to prioritize. So number one, the ease of access. Number 2, touching the river. How important is it for you to actually be able to get down to the river and actually get to the river and touch it? Whether it's putting a boat in the river, a kayak in the river, or walking along a boardwalk within a wetland, etc. So being able to touch the river. Number 3, restoration of habitat. Number 4, lawn space, so large open areas that potentially could be used for festivals, for family gatherings, for sports, versus natural areas. So think of lawn space as activities and events, and natural areas as trees and flowers. So the ability to walk through a forested area and look at the wildflowers or see the native grasses, etc. So what we'd like you to do is everyone will have 5 blue dots, and we've written 1 through 5 on the blue dots. For each category, we'd like you to prioritize. So what you see is each category has a line, and there's 5 boxes next to it. So if access to the river is priority number 1 for you of these 5 categories, then put a blue dot in the priority 1 column. If access to the river is number 5 on your list, but habitat restoration is number 1, then put a dot in the column for 5 for habitat restoration and 1 for access. Please don't put 2 dots in the same column or 2 dots in the same line, because that means you're giving 2 things the same priority, or you've given 1 category 2 priorities. So I'll be here to help, so please feel free to ask any questions. Any questions?
Yeah, I want a clarification.
Yes.
So you want all of this feedback tonight?
This is an activity for folks to stay or to go, to just...
Because not the whole committee's here, so we got to figure out a way to also then send this electronically to members who aren't here.
We can do that very easily.
So we'll work with Matt to be able to do that. So those people who want to stay and want to do that, but they may want to think about it.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. You're welcome to take...
I just want to make sure that we're not, this is not the last time or the only time you get feedback or the time, so to be...
No, you're welcome to sit and chat and talk about it. If you need to go, by all means, we can send this out via email as well, and get your feedback if you'd like to think about it. Any other questions? Yes?
Oh, right.
Can you go back to the diagram?
Let's do general questions.
You're talking about lawn space and natural space.
Yes.
So the open space, that's great. The open space along the river is adjacent to the future stockyards, which is also envisioned as a future event space area.
Correct.
So in determining what's more important, whether it's lawn space or potentially natural habitat, we already have some dedicated event space. This space is adjacent to it. I just want to make sure I'm understanding it correctly.
No, absolutely. It's a very good point. I think you're right. Taking the riverfront open space within the larger context of National Western Center is important. And we will factor that, we can factor that into the feedback. So we can look and say if folks' priority is open lawn space, for example, and if in the programming exercise that we go through in campus placemaking, the determination is that the yards is going to be a hard paved surface of some kind, then lawn space potentially is on the riverfront side, and hard festival area is to the east of National Western Drive, and so that becomes a consideration in our thinking. There's a possibility that the yards may end up being grass for most of the year and hard surface for stock show. We don't know yet. We'll figure that out in campus placemaking. And so if that becomes the case, then the importance of lawn spaces within the riverfront open space become less important, but it's important for us to know whether it's important to the neighborhood or not.
And then on the yellow and green boxes,
Mm-hmm.
didn't understand one of those.
Sure, we'll get there.
This one.
Okay.
The yellow box for 4. It looks like 4 and 5 are equal, except for that yellow box on 4. Can you describe that in more detail?
Sure. So number 4 is relocating the pipe within the open space to the west of National Western Drive. So versus number 5, where the pipe actually goes underneath the roadway. So in order for wherever Metro is going to put a pipe, they require an easement. But if the pipe goes under the roadway, the easement is not a concern because it's under the road. But if the pipe is in the open space, so if it's underneath, let's say, a lawn in the open space, you're limited on what you can do on top of that pipe. You can't plant trees because the roots of the trees can't invade the area of the pipe because they might have to get in there to dig it up to repair the pipe. You can't put a building on top of it. It would need to be relatively flat and level. You need to be able to drive trucks out to the pipe across the open space, so that defines a little bit what the surface has to be in order to get pretty heavy trucks, 20,000-pound trucks out onto that open space. So that's why we've identified that as it's somewhat restrictive to what we can program in the space. It's not at all insurmountable. But it's a challenge. I mean, I'm continually surprised to find out where there are wastewater pipes that run through that you would never know. They're under the ground and they're under our parks that we're not aware of. But it does limit. Right now, when we're looking at a kind of clean shaded sheet of paper for programming this open space, it's a limitation. No problem.
Any other general questions for Eric? Okay, so anybody who wants to stay behind afterwards to do the chart or ask more specific questions, that'll be the game plan. Any announcements or public comments?
Yes. My name is Leslie Leon. I'm in communications for the NWC-CAC. I just wanted to mention that the NWC-CAC will be hosting on June 10th an ice cream social for the Global Olivia Swansea community. We're going to be on the park next to the Swansea Rec Center. We have a quarterly open house, but we decided it's the summer, let's celebrate. There's a lot of things going on into the neighborhood, so our team will be there, and we hope the community will join us and enjoy some good ice cream, some games for the kids, bring the family. We will be sending more information along, but I thought it was important to mention this to the group. And we will also be we have started hosting our monthly community office hours in an effort to be more available to everybody in the community, so that we are just not at the web building downtown, but that we are here actually more accessible to anybody in terms of questions, comments, concerns. So it happens every third Friday of the month in different locations around Global Olivia Swansea. In June, we are going to be at Focus Points. They will be hosting our office hours, and we hope that you help us spread the word out. Thank you so much.
In reference to the survey that you're doing with the dots, will we all be just getting this electronically as well?
So I'm going to ask Matt to start for this activity. By the way, I think you all remember Matt. He just happened to have graduated from CU Boulder. Thank you very much. Yay, Matt. And is now gainfully employed at CRL after he interned for a couple of years. So
He got the job over me.
I want to make sure that he stays, and for those who want to stay and go through this, and then I want Eric and Matt to work together, because this is we're going to have to really be very specific as to what everybody wants you to do. But if Eric says tonight's not the only night, I think it's really important that you all get this electronically and you can think about it, because you may have a thought today and change your mind tomorrow to be able to do this. I mean, this is pretty important stuff.
I just feel it's a little rushed on us, making these kinds of decisions,
Don't.
5-minute decisions.
Correct, don't disagree. And plus, a lot of members aren't here.
Anyone else?
Drew?
So what is the status of the eventual authority and thereby the governance structure? Is that something that's...
Actually, I can address part of it from our end. Gretchen can address it.
If that's this whole thing you want to make a topic out of, then...
No, I actually think, here's what we haven't thought through. So the National Western is getting a set of documents from the lawyers in the next couple of days, which The Board of Directors of the National Western has not reviewed any documents yet as to where this is moving forward. Paul Andrews has been actively engaged. Some of us have been sitting in with our own lawyers on our own process as to what we need to, what the national, for example, from our side, the National Western side is, the city is spearheading this process. It is the thought that there is a framework agreement that will include governance and a series of issues that will go through City Council this summer. There is not a determined date yet, and there is some dates and work in progress. But one of the things we need to talk about, and we need to talk to Kelly about, our thought process is that that issue needs to come to the June 29th meeting.
June 29th, CAC.
Can I add to that?
Yep.
I don't know if you need this or not. But,
Is it working now?
yeah. So I did talk with Kelly about this because it's something that we're spending a lot of time on to pull together, and we do want to come back in June. He actually suggested that as an agenda item to talk about schedule. And I just wanted to clarify, the framework agreement that Maria mentioned is pretty important because there are a couple of key parts of the decisions between the three equity partners that enable the campus to move forward. And it's the transfer of land is an important piece. Capital funding commitments are an important piece. And very important, as we've been told by the WSSA board, is what are the basic outlines of an authority structure? What type of entity is it? And adding a little more detail to that. Certainly there's a lot we don't know about the operations of the campus, and we won't know for some time. But to be able to put some certainty around those three areas, what's the essential composition of an authority? Is it, what type of structure should it be? And that's in large part a legal question of how close or far from the city does the authority sit? And part of it is a tax question, a Tabor question. So these are some of the discussions that we've been having, and I do think it would be important in June to put forward a schedule of how these discussions continue and how they move forward a legislative process.
The other issue that is included and embedded in the framework agreement is naming rights. If you recall, the National Western must, not may or whatever, must raise $50 million in private cash. Along with its land, the entire contribution to the National Western, from the National Western is $125 million, of which 75 is land. If you recall, all the land that this whole complex sits on was privately acquired. The taxpayers have never acquired any of the land for the National Western. 3 buildings have been built with public bond money, the Event Center and the expansion of the Hall of Education in the 1989 bond issue, but the actual land is owned by the National Western, the Western Stock Show Association, which is the official name of the not-for-profit. That is what Gretchen is talking about, the transferring happening. Obviously, that's a pretty big decision for the stock show to give up its land in perpetuity and make sure that those pieces are in place. That, you know, the stock show cares that there will always be a stock show in Denver, right? Maybe 50 years down the road, some mayor decides that they want to dismantle this. I don't know. That's really big issue. I mean, you know, we all think about it, that can't happen, but the stock show is 107 years old. So, or 109.
No, 111.
11, sorry, 11, you know, so I think those are the kinds of issues we're talking about. There's also naming rights. Denver has a disparate naming rights policy, and if we're going to use naming rights to be able to raise $50 million, both corporately and philanthropically, there has to be a change in that piece. That's also embedded in the framework agreement. Keep in mind right now, the stock show operates on an agreement that was enacted in 1990 and expires in 2040. And if any of you pulled that agreement off today, it has no relevance to what's happening on this campus today. So that agreement has to be superseded by another document.
So if we're going to take this up on June 29th, that's, I'll just say the questions for that.
Yeah, I'd quite candidly, we haven't seen, we being stock show, and
Right.
Terrence is on the board, have not seen the full breadth and scope of all the documents. Lawyers are working on that. So that's what we're...
There's not a lot we
waiting
can
for.
tell you right now.
Okay.
We know more about naming rights, but that's where, particularly because the capital campaign for the stock show has to start. and we have to address the naming rights issue.
So you need to make that, I mean, I think this is a public question.
It is totally a public question, and it will go through a public process. I mean, when Candy brought it up 3 months ago, it was very clear, this will be a very vetted, robust discussion at council. It has to go through a public process. None of this can happen without it going and enacted in a ordinance by city council.
If it is the topic for the June meeting, can you guys provide the documents, including the one you just referenced, before the meeting so that we can read it and come prepared?
We will make our best efforts. And I believe that also the EOC, which meets in June, will also see some of these documents.
Yeah, we don't have, as Maria said, we don't have anything ready now because the lawyers are still figuring out what the parameters look like. The first thing we need to talk about is the schedule for the process, and then as we finish the documents, and can provide, in addition to that, some summary of what the major issues embedded in each one are. Some of them take a long time to go through, so we may have to spend some time going through them individually, issue by issue, if there are questions. So I think it's more of a kickoff next month, but it's a very public process. It's a lot of city council engagement. They've been asking us a lot of questions too, and we're getting ready for that. So.
And for the record, the lawyer sounds so pejorative. I mean, on behalf of all the lawyers in the world. Juan.
Tengo un anuncio. Tengo un anuncio y compromiso del presidente de Clínica Tepeyac.
And along with the president of Clínica Tepeyac.
Estoy participando en un grupo de enfoque para la prevención del prediabetes.
I'm participating in a prevention focus group for prevention of diabetes.
Están trabajando la Clínica Tepeyac con este programa de prediabetes.
Clínica Tepeyac is working with this group and this program of prevention of diabetes.
Y nos están educando en la alimentación y cómo prevenir el prediabetes.
And they are educating us on eating habits and how to prevent the diabetes, pre-diabetes.
Y están invitados la comunidad de Globio, Elyria y Swansea.
And the community of Globeville, Elyria, and Swansea are also invited.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And AE. Thank you.
I think there's a couple dots to connect, depending on what your scope is of naming rights that you're talking about. So I want to make sure I'm recalling that was the assessment of, I mean, that's like, can you say what you mean by naming rights so we all know?
Right. So I'll try to, it gets convoluted, right? Because it gets, depending on what you're talking about. It has always been anticipated that one of the ways that the stock show, if you go, and I don't want to use the Museum of Nature and Science as an example, or the Hamilton Building for the Art Museum, Lenny Martin is now, for example, committed $25 million to be able to do the capital rework of the old Art Museum building, of which then his family's name will sit on it, right? Because the stock show has a very different contract, and that was never contemplated in its old contract. The stock show does not have the same latitude that the Botanic Gardens, the zoo, the Museum of Nature and Science, or the Denver Art Museum has. And I think all of us would argue that the National Western is just as much cultural as anything else, even though it doesn't, and it's never been part of scientific and cultural. So that if you read the Denver, very short Denver ordinance of how naming rights are done for city buildings, ultimately these buildings will all be owned by the city and county of Denver, even though they may be managed in a very different way, and they will all be the property of the taxpayers. We have to change that law. So let's just say that the Equine Center, okay, actually that's not a good example because that would be a CSU building, and CSU has the rights to do naming rights on its own because they're a state entity. So let's just say that the yards, there's only like 5 or 6 buildings or entity or pieces where naming rights would apply. And so let's say one of them is a yards, and some philanthropic family wants to come in and give, say, $5 million or $10 million for the $50 million gap or whatever to do that. There isn't a vehicle to do that under the current city law, because our contract from 1990 never contemplated that we would ever do that. unlike the contracts with the cultural facilities. The Museum of Nature and Science can name a hall, can name a building. The zoo went out and got the Toyota whatever elephant piece. They never had to, they could just do it and get the money. So that's the disadvantage.
Okay, so the reason I asked, and I appreciate you talking about the mechanics, is because I really feel like this is something the CAC can be aware of together. Because naming rights will reflect the value system of evolutionary agriculture, for example, and I could name a few firms, which I won't, international firms, that I would personally strongly object to as building namers, even if they had all the money in the world. So anticipating that kind of a discussion, I just want to elevate it to the CAC, and that's the dots I want to connect from the comments earlier about when we get into the private industry.
Right.
I think that's a real opportunity to be forward-looking, even globally.
Right.
Just to put it on the table for.
Right. I understand. We understand. And there's obviously a different view of opinions and whatever. There will be some parameters on the language. There are some entities that the National Western feels strongly that they're obligated never to sell to. One of them is marijuana. The other one is any kind of adult entertainment, and the third one is alcohol. In terms of spirits, it's not going to be the Jim Beam Arena or something like that, right?
So I just wanted to open it. I know it's a long term. We're not there, but I just wanted to.
Yeah, understand. And this is a long-term process. Naming rights will not happen simultaneously. Some things will go first, and it depends what's available to be built and be able to do that. So, okay.
I was hoping for a Cuervo Arena.
We'll get you some Cuervo, but anything else for the good of the order? Okay, don't forget your surveys. The Delgani's back there. Otherwise, have a good night. See you next month.
All right. I gotta go relieve my mom's caretaker.
You seem a little stressed. Yes, you hopping.
No, I told you.